I think being an academician has certain advantages. But very good afternoon to all of you. And it's a great honor and a privilege to speak in the presence of Dr. Singh and what we call, Mr. Siddiqui said, character and content leaders. They are there sitting in front of me. They are here sitting with me. So it's a great privilege and honor. One thing that academician does is that he can comfortably ask questions. All right? So that's what I will do. I will ask certain questions and let me use the word, I'll raise certain questions. There's a risk over there that the risk is that there's a hope that these questions are relevant questions. The second is I'm going to proffer some solutions, and these solutions would be more directed towards academia, because at the end of the day, if we have only 6% of diversity, or let's say gender in the workplace, that's what the report says over there, that somewhere down the line, industry can also blame the academia for it. After all, how do they ensure that there's a diversity over there? They ensure diversity over there only when they recruit from the campuses. So if the campuses do not have diversity, how can they have diversity? So if the onus, therefore, is on us. So that's what will be my theme. So let me start with the one simple way by which we look at diversity. Simple way of looking at diversity is say, well, how diversity is all about differences in a collectivity or a group. Now, these differences, the most obvious difference is in terms of gender. Another obvious difference is in terms of race or ethnic background. But the more subtle differences come from the point of, I would say, your social background, your economic background, your educational background. And now today, in today's world, in terms of your ideological preferences and also your sexual orientation. So we need to probably expand our notion of diversity. Now, everywhere people have been talking about diversity, people have said you need to be diverse. One reason is the idea of affirmative action, where we are trying to create some kind of equality or some kind of equity in our society. That's one way. And a typical answer over there is that we are an equal opportunity employer, which basically translates into this, and if we have 6% women workforce, which basically translates into this, that we are welcoming everybody, but then we are okay without having women or people with differences. All right, so that's the way the equal employer ideology is all about. So we probably need to take a look at it. A much more, I would say, and this is what at times I get fogged because of the fact that everywhere authors have written, practitioners have written, industry captains have written about the sustainable competitive advantage that diversity could bring to your organization. You know, I teach organizational design, and one of the most important theory of organizational design is how do you create a fit between what you are, between the organization, and the context in which the organization is functioning. Now, if the context has a huge variety, you need to reproduce that variety inside the organization. That's what we say. But are we reproducing? So that's the question. Are we reproducing that variety inside our organization? And if we are not, then probably what we are doing is missing out on the distinctive individual taste and preferences for any product or services. If you are, let's say, if you are impervious to what is happening around you, you don't bring that variety inside, how would you know what people want? And if you do not know what people want, what kind of products or services can you provide? Now, that's a logic that is so irrefutable, and I cannot understand why corporates keep on missing out on this fact that diversity is required for competitive advantage. Now, this is an instrumental rationality. Now, one reason why so we are happy with saying, well, we have this number. But the most important thing that we need to ask is, what are people diverse? When we hire a woman, she brings in diversity, but she is not diverse. She's an individual. But do we provide her with conditions that can make her maintain her individuality? Same thing with the race, same thing with people who have LGBT orientation, same thing with people who have different ideological preferences, same thing with people who have a different kind of a social and economic background. Are we providing conditions by which they can maintain their individuality and therefore they therefore would not have any doubt with regard to their professional capability, their technical competence, and their ability to stand with anybody and work with anybody and perform admirably? I think diversity can make sense only when there is an inclusion. And that's where the diversity notion has to be expanded. Today, we do not have to measure companies anymore as to how much diverse is the workforce. We have to measure companies in terms of how inclusive they are. Have they created conditions? Have they designing any intervention by which they make people who bring diversity continue to maintain that diversity within the organization? I think that's the biggest challenge. So maybe down the line, when we look at reports on diversity, we would also like to look at reports as to how they are trying to reproduce the diversity in the organization. Now, one way by which I said the industry can always turn around and blame the academia. We don't produce people we don't supply them with people who are diverse enough or who are individuals enough. And I think as somebody from the business school, my directors also over here, we also need to take an onus. Maybe if you look at some of the best B schools, we have gender in terms of 30 to 40%, but a typical B school has a character which is male, which is urban, which is engineer, and which consists of people who are coming from the same kind of a social and economic background. There's a tremendous amount of similarity from one to another. So where's the diversity in the B school and what are we doing about it? Now, one reason as to why we are not diverse is that we take admission through a process called CAT, which is highly designed in favor of urban, male, engineer, and so on and so forth. Aren't we doing a disservice to the nation? In fact, the captains of the business school are over here. I think it's a high time that we took a very hard and close look at our admission process. Is CAT the best mechanism to take in people? Now, if we have an engineer's mindset within the business schools, definitely we'll have an engineer mindset so far corporates are concerned. Now, if you want to break that, or if you want to expand that, we need to have some other mindset. I was rather lucky. I was able to crack the CAT with my political science background and went to probably to one of the best IIMs over here in India. I had a problem with regard to quantitative techniques. I was able to overcome that. So a person with a social science background can compete equally well with anybody who comes from an IIT or from other, I would say, great places. And I'm sure that today a lot of corporates are going down to SRCC and other good colleges to hire people. There are times they're giving them better salaries than what students from a lot of B schools are getting. That means corporates are alive to the fact that there is a huge talent out there which necessarily does not come to the B schools only because they are not able to qualify through the CAT system. If they are so smart enough to know that talent is there, why aren't we smart enough to know that talent is also there? There was a time when Dr. Preetham Singh and I was doing a program for Jai Bharat Maruti sir, and if you remember, the Dean of INSEAD had come over to India to hire a girl, and they came all the way. For two reasons. One, she was good in CATs. Number two, she came from, I would say, a family that would ensure that a lot of people from India would come over there and take admissions. Now, I was lucky enough to handle placement for almost like 9 years in my life, for MDI and also an IMI. And I've also realized one thing, that at the end of the day, your hiring by the corporate depends upon the kind of graduation that you have come up into the college with. Your graduate scores are equally important. Your graduate background is equally important. Now, if that be so, why can't we look beyond the CAT as a mechanism of admission and maybe go on to identify some of the good schools and taking some of the best talent from there, good schools and good colleges? Nothing stops us. We just have to, as one of my professors used to say, we just have to expand or break our boundary rationality. The bounds over here, we say we only take people through CAT. But your job is to take in people who are talented. Your job is to take in people who have the capability to become great managers tomorrow. Now, if that is your job, what stops you? Number two, once we get in people from this kind, we say, well, they probably will struggle in quantitative techniques. Now, if that be so, you design some kind of a capsule by which they are able to come up to that level. Nothing again stops you. Nothing again stops you from what you call from providing merits cum means scholarship for people who cannot afford education. Saying that my students can take a loan from SBI is not good enough. What are you doing in order to harness, or let's say, remove that idea that I have to look after my economic needs, I don't have the economic wherewithal, how will I pursue education, what will happen if I don't get a loan? Why can't B schools think in terms of providing means cum merit scholarship? Nothing stops. It's just that we don't want this diversity. There is some kind of a notion of triage that is operating in the minds of the people who are looking after management institutions. B schools suffer from this triage. There's a rough edge over there. We don't have to worry about it. Let them do something else. I'm sorry, this is triage is a big word. But I think the whole idea is to provoke you to think different right over here. I again had a good fortune of looking after accreditation. So when the people had come from ICWIS and also from AMBA, they said, well, you are a business school, but bulk of the students come from North India. Okay. A typical business school, bulk of the students come from North India, and you want a global accreditation. In order to be a global accreditation, at least be Indian first. Do we have representation from different parts of the country? Or we are typical North Indian, Delhi-based institution? That's a question that they asked. And then we say, well, India is a subcontinent. And we show sprinkling from Kerala, we show sprinkling from UP, from sprinkling from Odisha, Bihar, and say, well, our job is done. But the fact of the matter is, your 80% of students who gets into your management schools, they are typically people from Bombay, Delhi. Some of them are from Calcutta if they are able to go through Presidency College and everything else. And a lot of people are from Andhra Pradesh. You go through any of the IIMs, that's the demographics. So we are not even subcontinental. Again, we are not even Asian. And we want global accreditation. In fact, in a lot of places we say we encourage people to come from other parts of the country, other parts of Asia. How do we do it? We have a GMAT cutoff. What's your GMAT cutoff? 680. Or 640. No, who on earth at 640 or 680 will come to India? They would rather go to USA. They would rather go to Europe. Now, I had a classic instance of a person who came from Nepal to Management Development Institute. That's when I was a faculty there. And he came from Nepal and he came to MDI on an exchange from LUMS, Lahore University of Management Studies. So he took admission in Pakistan to come to India. And I had a difficulty talking about visa as to how he can go to visit Agra. Can you imagine a Nepal person from Nepal thinking in terms of visa restrictions in order to visit places that is normally available to everybody who comes from Nepal? Now, why can't we attract people from Nepal? Why can't we attract people from Sri Lanka? Why can't we attract people from Thailand? What stops us? It's just the mindset that, well, we need to have a cutoff that is 640. Why do we need to have a cutoff like 640? So I think if we have to think about diversity in the workplace, we have to start with creating conditions, designing interventions by which we make our academic institutions diverse, both demographically and also in terms of educational and social and economic background. Gender is not just good enough. I rest my case here. Thank you.